Hey, good evening, golf friends. Welcome to my webinar series, Tuesday Traces. As you know, the purpose of this webinar is to show how the V1 pressure mat powered by BodyTrack is used. If you watched the webinar from this past Friday, Hacking It with Hash, hosted by BodyTrack, you might think that we should change the name of this to Foot Movement Patterns Podcast or Friday Foot Patterns, but I am going to stick with Tuesday Traces. Please check out that webinar on the BodyTrack YouTube channel. It was wild as usual. It was Terry Hashimoto, Jake Thurm, Richard Hughes, and I. Welcome to the folks that registered via Zoom, and welcome to the folks tuning in to the Facebook Live channel. Our recording of tonight's webinar will be available on the V1 Sports YouTube channel in a few days when Anna edits and posts, which she does every week. Thank you, Anna. We love answering really good questions, so please post them in either chat window on Zoom or Facebook. My amazing team will feed them to Todd and I so that we can answer them. I always make a joke that we only answer the funny questions and the good ones, but we really answer all the questions if we can. A little bit about V1 Sports. We are a 25-year-old company and the leader in delivering video analysis and instruction solutions to golfers and golf instructors literally around the world. In addition to our partnership with BodyTrack, we are excited to share our new V1 Game and V1 Coach app with the golf community, and some additional new integrations with some simulator partners are coming soon. Keep an eye out for some exciting announcements this fall if you haven't already seen my story on Instagram today. I did a little teaser. Tonight, I'm going to introduce a few visuals of V1 Game, which is the new V1 Sports app. Your mobile phone or Apple Watch become your personal caddy, game performance tracker, and pocket golf coach. The powerful GPS data provides accurate yardages to greens, hazards, and landing zones to help navigate the course. After your round, the intuitive performance analysis technology provides a ton of statistics that reveal your strengths, weaknesses, and paths to improvement. It functions without a need for wearing any other device other than having your phone in your pocket or wearing an Apple Watch. I'm super excited for our BodyTrack expert tonight to address some areas of your game to work on that we have captured in visuals in V1 Game. It's going to be really cool because we're going to identify some struggles, and then Todd is going to share how he would address those in a lesson. This is real data from V1 Game that Todd will talk about. So in honor of that, in honor of presenting this V1 Game on Tuesday Traces, which I've never done before, we are offering 50% off of V1 Game. Please use the promo code WEBINAR. This is for all of you golf students. If you are in the V1 network and you are a golf instructor, you already have access to V1 Game and V1 Coach. You can send me an email and I will get you set up. Really quickly, if you don't already know, I am Mandy Von Seat. I am the sales manager for V1 Sports based in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. Everyone will tell you this, I love my job and my team, and I love putting great technology in the hands of golf instructors and golfers. It's going to be fun closing the circle tonight and showing off V1 Game, what may happen on the course, and how my co-host would address this in a lesson. Which brings me to the reason we're all here. My co-host, Todd Adcock, is a PGA professional at the Mark Janes Golf Academy in the Tunbridge Wells area of England. He is also a tournament golfer. Just to brag on him, Todd has had a successful amateur career, achieving a handicap of plus 4.2, being 8th in the world amateur golf rankings and representing England for 4 years and then winning the English Amateur Championship. It's pretty awesome. He turned professional in 2012 and spent 4 years playing the PGA European Tour. Todd still currently plays in tournaments and teaches full-time, so we are super grateful to have him here tonight. Thank you so much, Todd, for staying up late. I really appreciate it. And welcome to Tuesday Traces.
Thanks, Mandy. How are we doing?
Great. So really quickly, what's your next tournament? Because I know you're playing and teaching. So I'm just curious, just to throw it out there, what is the next one you're playing in?
Yeah, at the moment, a lot of tournaments have been cancelled a bit at the moment with what's been going on. But I've got some events on the PGA South region, so the region closest to me. I'm down at Prince's and Royal St George's next week. So I'm down there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which would be great. So obviously Royal St George's should have had the Open this year, but it'll have to host me instead.
Awesome. I think it'll be great. I would do that if I were them. Okay, so we have to talk golf. You're a player first. Your professional golf career is super impressive. And I always say your pro should play golf. Tell everyone that's tuning in a little bit about your philosophy as far as seeing the golf swing from the inside and how your experience as a player influences your lessons.
For me, my background was more in the fitness industry, as well as growing up playing golf as a kid. So I see the golf swing a lot more from inside out. So I'll look at how someone moves, understanding of how kind of joints work, make sure your joints are aligned. For example, your elbow is going to do this. You can't ask it to go side to side because it's just not going to do it. So we need to make sure you're aligned correctly. From there, just trying to take a real kind of holistic, all-round view of the golf swing. To me, kind of everything's going to play a part in affecting everything else. So I want to try and put all the different bits and pieces together and find out the one that's going to kind of fix two or three things for one nugget of info, really.
Awesome. I think that's so cool. You have you made a comment about you did it backwards, but I think you did it in a cool way. Just for fun, you want to tell everyone a few of your former teammates, just so we can sort of place where you were when you were playing? I thought it was the list of your teammates is pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've done all right, to be fair. There's a few of the guys. So old teammates back when I was playing, the guys like Tommy Fleetwood's doing really well at the moment. Andy Sullivan, Eddie Pepperell, Tom Lewis is doing well at the States at the moment. Till Hatton does all right for himself. So yeah, a few of the guys have pushed on really nicely.
That's so cool. That's fun. I can imagine there's some fun stories with Tommy Fleetwood.
They're great as well. I know for me, a lot of times if there's an event nearby, so Walton Heath hosted the British Masters a little while ago, so I'll pop up on the practice day and bump into them and stuff. We'll go inside the ropes for a little while and have a catch up. So they're all just really good, down to earth guys.
That's awesome. I love that. Next time you're out there, make sure you're filming swings so we can add them to our tour model library.
I'll take the mat so I can put them on the get some traces for you.
Congratulations on completing your PGA credentials recently. We made a comment that you said you did it backwards. I think it's kind of cool that you started as a player because you can use that in your teaching, and now you have all of the credentials and still playing. And you're also a new member of the V1 Sports family. We just recently worked together this summer to get that body track mat in your hands. So you're a new body track instructor. I know you have a background in physical therapy. Did that add to your decision to add the technology? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah, definitely. Movement for me in the golf swing is much more important. Again, philosophy-wise, I'm much more of a kind of swing the club through the positions rather than position the club through the swing. That's kind of one of the sort of sayings I picked up a while ago that I sort of believe in. Actually, for me, one of the reasons why I really took into body track was actually using it for myself. My coach, I worked with Ryan Fennick for a long time. He had a mat he borrowed from Steve Orr, another coach over here nearby. Just had a problem in my swing where I wasn't playing much for a little while, doing my training and stuff and working in the shop. My hands, no matter what I did, my hands wanted to just reach for the sky and had a really high hand path, and I really struggled to get it where I wanted to consistently. I might work on it for a little while, get it better, and then a couple of weeks off, boom, straight back there again. So found out, got on the mat and found that most of my weight was in my toes and there's no way I could have turned from there. So as soon as I recentered myself, it kind of freed up my body, and since then it made a big difference to my game. So I really kind of bought into it and wanted to learn more about it, really.
So, and just, that's such a cool story. I have to go back to that moment where you're standing there as a touring professional and looking at trying to work on something, and you see that. How did you see it? Did someone put like an iPad in front of you in order to see that? Because did no one before tell you get out of your toes?
No, again, with pressure, it's one of those things you can't really see.
Right.
Posture always looked fine. It looked like it always had done, really. And it wasn't necessarily a case of me changing spine angle or really changing any of my tilts. It was more of a case of just shifting myself back to the middle of my feet rather than leaning forwards. And for me, I think it was just a case of where I went through a stage, I wasn't playing that much. Muscles get weak, and all of a sudden you just get a little bit sloppy with your posture and where your balance is. And for me, the more I was in my toes, I could try chucking my arms across my chest. I could put canes down. I could try anything to try and get me around there for a little while. And like I say, I'd get it when I was playing, but if I took a break, boom, straight back up there again. So it kind of really freed up my golf swing, and I've made some big changes this winter, having used the body track, and I really wanted to learn more about it, learn more about the traces, learn more about, again, link that with the movement that I kind of know a little bit from the physical background, and then it's helped my golf no end. So I was like, I've got to have one.
I love that. And so I would like, Kelly, if you can put this in the chat, because I think it's super important, and it literally comes up every single time I do one of these. I think Terry Hashimoto should patent this phrase, but he says, your toes are your brakes, and your heels are your accelerators. And your story kind of proves that you were in your toes and that was causing some breaks in your swing. And so we talked about that on Friday. We talk about that every time. It means something to me. I think about it all the time when I'm swinging. So Terry Hashimoto's statement, your toes are your brakes, your heels are your accelerators, get out of your toes, get your weight out of your toes. Yes, thank you, Kelly. That's something we always sort of throw back out there, and I like to put it in the chat so we can see it. Okay, I would suggest that anyone in England looking for a golf instruction, have a look at some of Todd Adcock's Instagram posts. He's also the only instructor in Tunbridge Wells using the body track technology. But as a new instructor, it's super impressive to see some of his before and afters and some of the things he's doing with the body track, especially coming from such a playing background and a successful playing background. Okay, so tonight we're going to present 3 different struggles on the golf course that were identified in V1 game. The power leak, consistency, and putting. I'm going to do a quick screen share to show you what V1 game is, and then data from V1 game that shows these areas needed for improvement. This is really cool. This is closing the gap between what you actually do on the course and what you may think your miss is. And this takes the emotions out of it and provides your golf instructor with some data to correct. And I'm kind of digressing here, but I love this quote that we talked about, Todd. Speaking of data, you mentioned it yesterday when we were talking, this morning, whenever we were talking, and you say most people use statistics like a drunk man uses a lamppost, more for support than illumination. I think specifically in tonight's webinar, that's really important, because the data that we're going to talk about that you get from game and coach and then the body track is, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? Supportive or illuminating?
Stats are great at the end of the day for a coach. I mean, like I say, you can use them to shine light on faults, or you can use them to back up arguments. That's kind of where that kind of comes from. I got that from Mark Immelman. I listen to a lot of his podcasts on the mark and that kind of stuff, and it's very true. The thing is with stats as well, like I say, stats don't lie. They tell you what's what, and with the V1 coach, I can find out my players' stats straight away. The other thing with stats I always find is players only want to work on what they're good at rather than what they're bad at. So going back to the personal training background, someone will say to me, "Oh, I haven't got to do lunges again, have I?" Yeah, you're doing it. You're weak at it. So it's similar sort of thing on the practice tee, really. So if you come in and you want to do driver, but I look at your driving stats, they're pretty good, but you're struggling putting or struggling chipping, we're going straight to the chipping green.
How many golf students that are watching are agreeing with this? That's so true. I really should only be taking my putter to the golf lesson ever, really. Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen share, and we are going to look at some V1 game data real quick. Let me get my, that's not the right one. Sorry, guys, let me get this. Okay, there it is. It was the Zoom window. Okay, here we go. And I have to put my glasses on. Here we go. So this is V1 game. The large window you see here is V1 coach. The phone is showing you V1 game. V1 game is our on-course, clicking through, is our on-course performance tracking app for players, utilizing advanced artificial intelligence and cell phone and watch technology to make tracking golf performance easier than ever for players. Afterwards, V1 Game's stats engine crunches the numbers to highlight strengths and weaknesses, guiding practice and game improvement. When paired with the new V1 Coach app from V1 Sports, the game improvement accelerates. Teaching professionals use V1 Coach to connect to players' on-course performance. Artificial intelligence helps guide teaching pros to specific areas to work on with their players. Actionable data plus measurable results. Okay, let's look at the first struggle. Okay, this is the power leak. This player struggles with power. So Todd, God, what is that? It is like just moving all over the place here. Sorry. So Todd, how would you use the pressure mat if this Johnny Mulligan's data comes back from game? How would you use the pressure mat to address that? And I know you're going to share some videos as well. You can do that, or you can just talk to it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, do you want me to share some stuff up? I've got, I'll say, a few
Sure,
videos on
love
here,
to.
right?
I know you've got some videos teed up to specifically talk about these 3 struggles. First is the power leak.
Let's get that going. There we go. So it should be coming through now. Is that sharing?
Yep, we can see it.
Yep.
And you've got your folder. Perfect.
Yeah, so power leaks, what I'd look at here, I've got a client, John, if I bring before and after swing of his. This is a really good one as well because it kind of shows what data that the body track can kind of bring up that might otherwise be overseen. If I put those 2 traces up on here, you'll notice the after is on the right, the before is on the left. So again, before on the left-hand side, you can kind of see the trace line is pretty into his toes. It's north of the kind of crosshairs in the middle of the screen there. But interestingly enough, where he is there, he's not too bad. But in his pre-shot routine, you'll see he sits himself in there nicely, and then what he does is he sets the club inside the ball and then moves the club out to the ball before he takes it away. So as he's about to take the club away, he gets to a point where he's 100% in both toes just before he's about to start. So what you'd look at there is, again, balancing someone for power. Really here, a lot of what we've done was setting him up. I wanted to change his pre-shot routine. So we've set him up so the golf club has to start from behind the ball. But rather than moving out to it, I wanted him to move to his left foot first. So if you look on the screen on the right-hand side, he's going to have a pressure shift to his left before he takes the club away. That's going to help him load his trail side earlier so that he can sequence his swing far better. And now he's far more balanced, he can make a nice full follow through with a real nice sort of pretty linear lateral trace. On the left-hand side, he's just going to be stuck in his toes most of the way through. And as he finishes, he's going to struggle. When it comes to power, I'd kind of go into the other 2 graphs a fair bit. So I'd look at the trace because I want to make sure that he's going to be striking it consistently. At the end of the day, if we want power, club head speed's one thing, but we've got to get ball speed. And for ball speed, we've got to get a good strike. So we need a decent trace to make sure we can strike it consistently. Go into the velocity chart in here. What you're going to see is straight away, if we look at the number up in here, let's make that red. So if we look at this number up in here, compared to the one on the left, his velocity is much quicker in the second video. So he's creating more speed. Okay, this velocity chart is basically the movement sort of side to side, sort of right and left. Anything north up here is his movement to the left. Anything below that green line is his movement away from the target. So he's peaking his velocity quicker and he's peaking it at left arm parallel on the way down. Another big thing that I'd really look at, and Terry was speaking about a fair bit last week, which is actually the 3rd graph that you get body track, which is the dynamic vertical force. Now, what I'd look at here, although in the second video, he produces slightly less vertical force, what I'd look at here on his backswing is how, if you watch, there's a nice sort of his total pressure, if you look at the orange line there, is actually nicely decreasing, so going below that green line. So that kind of shows that in his swing, in his backswing, rather than getting heavier as he goes back, he's getting lighter. So he's unweighting his body. So even as the club's going back, he's getting lighter. So now he's ready to slam down into the ground, to use gravity as an ally rather than fighting it, so that as and when he peaks on the right-hand side here, he can get much more of that speed back into the ball. Okay. On the left-hand side, you'll see as he takes it away, he's pressing hard. And now he's pressing hard because where's that red trace? Yep. Straight in his right toe. So he's pushing hard. I'd look at that and say, well, he's pushing hard not to fall over. He's trying to push himself into some sort of rotation. So I'd really, if we're looking at power, I'd combine all 3 of those graphs. So look at how consistent his trace is in the first one to check that he can get good connection more often. I'd look at the second graph to see how much speed side to side laterally he can produce between his right and his left foot, how his pressure's moving. And then in the third graph, I'd look at a nice kind of, as we've got here, which is much better, a nice steady unweighting move so that he can then slam down, use gravity to get into the ground, peak at about left arm parallel, and then he can start to again get that speed back into the club and have the freedom to swing through.
Well, might have been the best review of the 3 body track graphs and an improvement on a side-by-side I have ever seen. Can you go back to the DVF chart, Todd? It's a new graph, a new chart for a lot of people watching. Can you just talk to that a little bit? And also, do you show those other 2 graphs to your students? Did you go through all 3 of those graphs with this student?
I will do. For me, a lot of the technology, a lot of the data is kind of for me to know and me to simplify before I pass on. So what I try and look at is I definitely show them all 3 graphs. But again, if you're looking at 3 different graphs, they just look like squiggles on a line for a lot of people. So unless you can kind of understand what it actually means, I'll try and, I guess, demonstrate a little bit and explain as to what those lines mean and try and kind of put it in layman's terms so that I don't overcomplicate data too much, to try and keep it pretty simple.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking. Can you give us a layman's term description of this graph? Just because I'm a beginner golfer, I am not a golf instructor, and I am sure there are people watching that would love to hear a little bit more about it. Terry talked about it a lot Friday, so I'm just curious what your layman's term description of it is.
Yeah, so if we looked at this chart on the right, if we discuss sort of unweighting a little bit and its importance in creating speed, if you're gonna, let's say you're gonna do a squat jump, a vertical jump, okay? So as you're squatting down into the ground, you're going with gravity. So you're actually getting lighter. So then you're gonna use that force you can load into the ground to then press really hard to drive up, okay? So what we're looking at here is in a golf swing, if we wanna try and use gravity, we actually wanna get to the point where at the top where, again, Bryson talks a lot about now with his speed that he's gained about having his hands really high and pulling down on his lats. Now, if he gets his hands nice and high and he can rise his center, we're not talking about standing up out of your posture. We're just talking about feeling nice and tall, feeling light on your feet. Then you can slam down on the ground, use gravity as well as your own strength to pull down early to get the speed into the engine to then get into the ball. A lot of as well, what we spoke about with that kind of pressure moving forwards, you'll see in a lot of the long hitters that their pressure's doing a lot before the club actually moves. Now I kind of term that a little bit as it's kind of like spooling up a turbo of an engine. Okay, we want to get the ground, get that spooled up quickly so we've got the power and the system ready to go. If you're at the lights and you want to beat your mate, you're going to rev the engine a bit to get away quickly. That's kind of the way I see it a little bit, with that sort of movement forward first to then get you going.
Do you get, because this was a fix to a pre-shot routine, which gave him more power on the course, right?
Yeah.
So did you talk to him about that? We talked about that shift and moving, not moving, but getting your ground interaction moving. Is that part of his pre-shot routine? Did you give him that?
So definitely, what's the drill we did, a lot of it was a 2-step drill. So it'd start with the feet together. Always sort of make sure that people understand that the force needs to precede the movement of the club. So if you're doing a step drill, you need to step before the club moves. So get the timing of that. So we just did one where you'd have your feet together, ball in the middle of your feet. He'd step right first, then swing the club so we could get his pressure going to the trail side earlier, but he'd have to push his weight there from his left foot as his right foot was in the air, and then do the opposite the way through. So he'd actually step right, swing right, step left, swing left. So that was one of the big drills that we kind of did to help him ramp it up a bit. I should actually have that on here to save me explaining it. It's far easier to see it.
Nice.
But he'll be on here.
Oh, perfect. So Jim Altamirano will love this. He does every drill we give him. He will do it live in real time tonight. I promise you. It's so funny.
So again, this one here, what we would be looking at is that he'd start from a stance here. As he goes back, you'll see straight away his pressure is going to go all into his left foot to start the movement. So the club hasn't moved yet, but his pressure's in his left side. Now he's going to be able to transfer his pressure to his right foot really early. Okay. And again, when we look at where pressure should be in the swing, in this position, it goes out of screen a bit, so it's kind of hard to see at times. But the mass of the golf club is furthest away from the body. So it seems right that should be when the maximum pressure gets to the right foot, rather than most people believe that the maximum pressure should be at the top of your swing. Actually, you want to try and peak it earlier. Now in here, what he can do is he can step as he comes down, drive that dot to the left and come through. Again, when we go into the graphs of this drill, which is fantastic, again, you'll see a really nice high peak velocity at left arm parallel. And the other great thing you're going to see is this really helps him as he goes back. So you'll see with this graph here, let's blow it up a little bit. So you've got trail foot in yellow, lead foot blue, and the orange as the total. What you'll see is as he goes back, he's obviously going to push with his lead foot to push him back. But then we get this lovely gradual unweighting of the total and his trail foot pressure. Even though he's only on his right foot, he's still getting lighter on his right foot, even though he's standing on it. So that's that kind of unweighting feeling. So now he can lump down. And when we look at the numbering down here, look at that. He's got twice his pressure and most of it in his left foot.
That is awesome.
So it's a really cool drill for drumming up some power and some sequencing. So it helps, again, sequencing, strike, lots of really cool stuff come for free.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That data and those numbers, I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
It's really good changes. And I say that the main issue that he had was that he'd struggle off the tee with a lot of pulled shots. Really, he finally sort of wanted to try and hit it a bit further and was pulling the ball a bit when he tried. And we just kind of showed him that a lot of it really was in his pre-shot routine more than anything else.
Love that. So thank you for addressing the power leak that we see in V1 Coach. Okay, let's see another struggle. Consistency. This player struggles with consistency with irons. So V1 Game will capture all your shots. You can go in after and adjust if it's selected the wrong club. You can do that after the fact. But it will give back data to the V1 Coach app that is per club, per shot, and all of that. So Todd, the question is, how would you use the body track mat to address consistency?
Cool. Let's grab another trace up on here for you. So if I share my screen again, let's get the screen share going. Okay. So this one's a great one. This new client of mine, this was the first one is, I think we had maybe a 30-minute initial kind of assessment, and then we kind of went into work straight away. First video here that you'll see. Again, this is going to be kind of what's known as a scatter trace. The key to consistency is like my sort of take on it is that the body's the engine, and we need to get that running pretty consistently. If that's working consistently, then the golf club's going to follow. I think most amateurs are too worried about getting the golf club to the ball, rather than actually most better players, it's the last thing that reaches the ball. The body's always going to kind of precede that. What you'll see here, again, as we started up, as he goes back, he makes a half decent backswing in through here. But then what's going to happen is you'll notice, and this is sort of the first time I'd seen this really, which was really interesting, that as he was about to start down, if you watch that white pressure dot, which is the average point of his pressure between his feet, it's actually going to work backwards to his heel. So his right foot goes into his back heel, and the dot actually moves in the opposite direction to where the club's going. So he drives, in essence, his pressure is driving this way in his foot, which for him throws his hands outwards. So now once he's got that push back, again, the reaction of that is to drive him forward. So now everything is jumping out onto his toe. Okay, he's going to struggle for contact because now obviously the golf club's further away from him. He's thrown it away from his body as he's come through. And what you'll really notice on the velocity chart is his peak velocity happens well after the ball's gone. And something we don't sort of look at too much, but it's interesting for this particular trace, is if you look at the orange line on that graph, that's how he's moving. So white line is how he's moving right to left. Orange line is how he's moving heel to toe. And you'll see he has a massive spike up in that orange line. So that basically indicates that massive move forward in his foot. So what we needed to do was get him a much more consistent trace and try and get that dot moving in a consistent direction and time it correctly. Mm-hmm. So we did some step drill work similar to what I just showed you with John. That was at the end of this lesson. And he made a massive improvement in just one lesson. So this is at the end of that lesson, after doing some step drills. You'll see straight away that trace is completely changed.
Holy mackerel.
Okay. So again, this is all within 60 minutes. What you'll also see, again, this is a player who struggles with path. So he struggles with path of his golf club. He's got the typical kind of outside the ball coming in, struggles with shank, struggles with some sort of obviously top shots in through here. We did not once put a cane down. We didn't put a basket in his way. We created no obstacles for him. All we did was give him an idea of how his weight should move and a drill to kind of create that. Now, by the end of the lesson on the right, what you'll see is that dot moves in a consistent direction, okay? But also check out the delivery position compared to what's going on here. So now he is really striping that thing down the range. And when we look at the velocity chart, he peaks back here rather than peaking all the way over here.
Holy mackerel. I mean, that is quite the before and after right there.
Yeah, no, he's done a great job. And then, like I say, we worked on that in one lesson. And then if I just done on those, let's show you part 2, where we kind of ended up. Let's bring him in here. So we just did a little bit of work with him, but this was at the end of the second lesson. So you can see just how, if I bring that up against the original again, got them a bit back to front, but they're both in there. So you see massive change. And again, when we look at the golf swing on the left now, really under control, really consistent movement. Look at that pressure driven to the front foot.
Wow, that's amazing.
Behind, and we get him firing it down the line with, again, really good position of his peak velocity. And again, that kind of unweighting move as he drives into his lead side. So we've got some really good stuff there just in a couple lessons. But again, that's just working from the ground. So now for him, rather than thinking, he's done a lot of work in the past. He said about trying to keep his arms deeper and trying to move his arms around. And we just kind of explained, said, well, look, if we get your pressure moving in the right direction and in the right place at the right time, the club's going to follow. So he's done a brilliant job in a couple of lessons, and he works hard, and it's great to watch.
What is the student's name?
Ben.
Ben, was he blown away by that?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that is so cool. If I had those 2 traces, I would be like, you're not going to believe this. I mean,
yeah. But the biggest thing with it is, I find with the body track and having worked on it for a while, is same as it did with me, same as it's doing with Ben here, is it shows up underlying problems and why they've been a problem for so long.
Well, I mean, consistency on the golf course, I would sure be doing backflips off my pressure mat if you had just fixed that issue with this trace data. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, the thing for Ben is, at the moment, I think he's recently joined the golf club that I'm a member at. And at the moment, he's applying for his first initial handicap. He hasn't got himself a handicap as yet, but I thought, I don't want to pay him for money, whatever he plays off at the moment, looking at that.
That's so funny. So do you use the mat for all your new students?
Generally, yeah. So a lot of the time I'll use it, depending on the client. Every client, I'll kind of make it individual to them as much as possible. But I always want to try and get, especially before, because I always like, I think before and afters have such impact on seeing the difference. Little changes, bits and bits. Once you get to a certain point, you're kind of just settling in little changes. When it comes to sort of a first lesson, you want that kind of base point. Even if you're 3-4 months down the line and you've had a good couple of months, you always want to go back to say, look at where you were. This is where we're moving, because in any sort of progress, you're going to have a moment where you kind of feel like you plateau a little bit. You're not sure if you're moving forward, and you think, oh, is it actually working? And then when you go back a couple of months to look at the first one, you say, oh, okay, well, yeah, it is working. It's not too bad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Terry calls the scatter trace the money trace.
Yeah.
Because although you fixed it in one lesson, so I don't know.
Doing myself out of money.
Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to stop your share here. And I'm going to go look at one more struggle. It is selfishly my struggle. Let me see. I had some. Okay. This player struggles to get the ball in the hole. How would you use the body track mat to work on putting? Everybody's got to be feeling this question. definitely my miss. And I would definitely not be screen sharing my putting data. Okay, this is not mine. This is someone else's. So what would you do for putting?
Putting, again, I've got a video on here. I'll just pull up real quick. Let's just show
We haven't
you.
seen a lot of sharing of putting drills. So this should be good. And I'm sure our guests will get a lot out of this.
Again, where you say that putting can be a problem of yours, it's also can be a problem of mine. So this one's of me.
Cool.
What I'll generally do for putting is I'll use it a lot as kind of a reset. So I'll kind of reset my position, reset with a few other tools. So in this video, for example, we've created a bit of a gate drill. A lot of what I worked on here. So for me, I was struggling with some sort of 6-8 footers, not getting the ball started on my start line particularly well, especially with left to righters. So I've got a left to right putt in here that I was using. Struggled with a bit of a block, bit of a pull, just a bit of consistency really. Again, put myself back on the mat, created a gate drill, put one for the putter, one for the golf ball to go through for my start line. But I just found for me, when I was setting up, my ball position was going further and further forward, especially for left to righters, and my pressure was going far too much into my lead side. So I was getting to 80% in my left foot and mainly out in my toe. So I was really just blocking myself out of most putts before I even started. So what I do in here, in the pre-shot routine that I kind of built in, so I'll spend an hour or so just hitting putts, one putt at a time. I think it's really important with putting to go through the routine. It's too easy to have 3 balls in a sleeve, chuck them all down, bang, 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 off you go. So for me, when I do putting work, I'll always do it with 1 ball because I always want to reset my routine. And you'll notice here, probably not from this angle quite so well, but you see I take a little step to the left and then I take a bigger step to the right. Now that was a routine that I put in there to try and drag more pressure to my trail side. So to try and keep the ball position like with putting, you kind of want it slightly forward and middle so we can get that nice sort of centered to upward strike. But for me, if I just took a slightly wider step with my right foot, I could drag my pressure further to the right. Then from there, we always talk about here loads of things in golf, sort of keep your head down, keep your eyes closed so the ball's gone in, lots of different sort of tricks for keeping everything still. And to me, it just creates lots of tension. If you're thinking, don't move, don't move, don't move, then you're going to get tense. For me, if you're just looking at if you've still got the iPad in front of me, you're just looking at more of my traces. If I'm just focusing on keeping myself balanced in my feet, it actually keeps me more relaxed in the rest of my body. If someone says don't move, instantly you freeze and it's instantly you're tense. So right. Then your stroke's not going to flow. The other thing about it is you talk about sort of eyes being still. Well, when you've got the 6-footer there to win an event and your knees are knocking, you want to try and make sure that your pressure's pretty straight rather than just what your eyes are doing. So I'll kind of get on there, try and keep my pressure as still as possible, just feel like I'm almost on a balance ball really. And then from there, I find my stroke on here can be far more consistent and I can get the ball rolling end over end far better without any real technical thought.
That's awesome. Okay, so wow, 1 ball at a time.
Yeah, definitely for putting. Again, we get 1 chance on the golf course, so you want to build that routine in more than anything else. That's what I'd kind of use a body track for, not only for just finding where my pressure is, but I need to build the routine so that when I'm not on the mat, I can carry that onto the golf course.
So important to build a routine that works on the golf course, 1 putt at a time, a step drill using the left foot, then the bigger right foot, and then keeping your feet balanced instead of your head still. That's like, I owe you whatever it is for a lesson because you just gave me like the putting lesson. Whatever your hourly rate is, I owe you because that was huge. How often do you put the iPad down in this setup? I love this. This is what I show off. This is what I love to sell is this setup. How often are you putting that iPad?
Loads with clients, whether I'm doing putting or whether I'm doing full swing. One of the first things that I'll do anytime when I've got a client in is I'll put the screen in front of them when they're on the mat. Because the first thing you've got to explain is the old school sort of 2D video weight shift, which is kind of going out of screen right, out of screen left and moving the whole body. And the way I like to describe it is imagine you've got an excited puppy in front of you waiting for his ball. His feet are blipping, his tail's wagging and he's ready to go. So the pressure is going to change between, but the mass of the body isn't going to move. So I'll always put the screen in front of them. And the first thing I'll do is, and I think what's great about it is from a coach's perspective, is players to a degree are almost teaching themselves and getting their own feel. So rather than me trying, I mean, how do you describe a feel? Because what something feels like to me is completely different to what it feels like to you, to what it feels like to Harry, to Rich, to Jake, to anyone. It's going to feel different. But if you look at a trace and say, well, all I want to try and do is get that dot to have this kind of shape to it, then they can just try and have a play around on the mat, have the screen in front of them. I say, well, look, oh, there it goes. What does it feel like to you? Well, that feels like I've got a bit more weight over here. Okay, yep, that's the feeling. Let's stick with that. Let's run with it.
Yeah, it seems so easy, right? I also love that you don't have to put anything on, and it's just, you just throw it down, right? And you get that data and you get the visual. Feel and real is two different things, right? That's another one of those sayings. It's totally different unless you're looking at true data.
Definitely.
Okay, so do you have another few videos? I do want to ask you about the double tap. I know it's off subject, but I do want to ask you about, I know you watched the webinar. I'm curious on your thoughts on the double tap drill because it's new. But I would love to see if you have any other videos to share before I put you on the spot.
I've got a good one on here actually, which I kind of sort of put in there anyway. A lad that I've been coaching here. So this is James. James has just come out to college in America. He's gone to Limestone, and he was a really, really good county player over here, and he's come over to sort of take America by storm. A really, really powerful player. Now, again, I think he's +1, +2 handicap over here, sends it a long, long way. He's a real strong hitter. The one thing he really struggled with was shaping the ball, creating draws and fades. So his stock shot was a little fade, but as he wants to improve, certain holes are going to be right to left, certain holes are going to require a draw. Now, he found that the draw shot a little bit struggled to control. If he tried to play a draw, it would tend to be a sort of a straight block. So it would start on his intended start line, but it just wouldn't turn over. He came to me when he'd done a fair bit of work with TrackMan, had all the knowledge of exactly what he needed to do. He just wanted to go back to something a bit more feel-based so that he could kind of feel what he needed to do a little bit more rather than just see it in numbers. So these traces that you've got different views here. The one on the right is the trace that he'd have for his fade swing. On the left, this is how we managed to control his draw far better. So what you'll notice here on the left-hand side, as he's going to go back, he's going to drive into his left side, as all good players will do. But then at this point here, if you watch the pressure dot, this is the moment in his swing where that dot starts to drive in through the heel, and you'll see how much he pressurizes his heel during his swing. And when we talk about that dynamic force chart, I mean, James is up there at 1.8 to 2.1 in most of his swings. He puts a hell of a lot of effort and push into the ground. So with his fade trace, this is the maximum point he kind of gets to before he starts the kind of where's the draw tool? Starts the unwind movement earlier. So that's going to help him then unwind his hips, get the golf club out in front of him, and have a slightly left path through the ball to help him hit nice little soft fades. What we did to him and helped him with, just to try and help him control that draw, the main feeling was, if you notice a trace on the left, that as he goes through, that point in his downswing where the dot tries to kind of work back in the heel is later. It's further into his foot. It's later in the swing. So as he's able to load his toe and load that pressure into his foot further, he then delays his unwind slightly, which helps him slot the club behind him and deliver it on a slightly more rightward path. So for him, when he wants to hit that draw, we know his real strong move is how much he drives and pushes into his heel. He's always going to have that. It's a natural thing for him. But if we can just get him feeling like as he comes down, he starts to drive more of his pressure into his toe first, that pushes that trace into his lead side more so that he can then keep the club behind him a little bit longer and help him push his path to the right. He's sort of gone out to America. His college coach has said how well he kind of shapes the ball, and he's reached out to me saying that with all the TrackMan work that he'd done, the body track stuff had been the biggest thing for him to kind of help him understand how he's going to shape it. So for him now, when he wants to hit a fade, he just knows he gets his general sort of normal fade. He's never really struggled with that. When he wants to draw it, he just loads his lead toe up a little bit more and then fires hard. So it makes it.
I love that the correction using the ground. And I got to say that left foot twisting out in that video sort of looks familiar when we've been looking at Bryson's feet. So maybe this kiddo is after Bryson.
Yeah, I mean he's certainly not far behind him off the tee. He does send it.
Do you agree with that? That left foot kind of looks like what Bryson's doing, getting his toes out of the way and really twisting out of it.
Yeah, it's just adding rotation. I mean, he's got so much pressure in through his left heel that he's just kind of spinning on the heel of his foot and going on to sort of the outside of his foot rather than anything staying too toe bias or too much on the inside, which shuts off the movement of the hip above it. Generally, as your joints are lined up, you'll have one's going to be stable for one to be mobile, for the next to be stable, for the next to be mobile. So if you look at how you go from the ground up, your foot and contact with the ground is going to be pretty stable so that the ankle joint can move. Then the knee joint's going to be pretty stable for your hip joint to fire off. So everything's got to have something to turn off of. That's
where the PT degree comes in, right?
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge in there somewhere. But
everyone watching, and of course for Todd's student here who is now on my side of the pond, Todd is available for lessons on the V1 Marketplace. If you go to V1 Sports homepage and navigate to the students and marketplace, you will find Todd. You can submit swings to him, to his golf academy there, and he will submit back a voiceover lesson. I certainly will probably be sending you some of my putting videos to have you do some analysis for me. So we have about 15 minutes left. Do you have any other videos? I would love to hear your thoughts on the double tap, if not.
I've got one more thing I'd like to show, which
Perfect.
is something we did in the second lesson with Ben. This is one of my kind of favorite drills, really, for people that struggle with, let's say, someone that struggles flipping the golf club a little bit, losing control of the club face during impact. So if we look at where Ben came in, so this is where Ben was at the start of the second lesson that we did. And let's kind of show you the drill, and then we can go into kind of where it kind of got into. So again, this is where he came back to. Trace again, much better. But what he had as he got to here is, you'll notice pressure tries to move forward, but then it's going to back up and have a bit of a stall. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now you'll see there the club flips past, and he struggled with a few pulls to the left and sort of over sort of hooks to the left, if you like, or pull hooks. A lot of what he's going to react to, even though that shot is going to the left, one of the tendencies we noticed in his first 30-minute assessment was that he could get his wrist and his club face into a cupped wrist position with quite an open club face. Now, the more that I kind of look at pressure and club face, the two are massively linked. If your club face is really open, your pressure is always going to back up to give you more time to square that golf club up.
Wait, say that again. Your club face and your pressure is connected.
Definitely. So you look at players. For me, I look at players and kind of go, okay, right. So a lot of the technology that I'll use, there's 3 points of contact in a golf swing. You've got club face to ball, you've got feet to ground, you've got hand to club. So the devices that I use try to measure all of those, so I can look at the interaction at all those points. For someone like Ben, you'd look at that and go, okay, well, am I going to work with this player top down? Meaning, if I change his club face position, his trace is going to change massively because he doesn't have to then wait to stall to close it because it's already square earlier. Or has he got a good club face position and I've just got to get him to move better? So that's one of the big conversations, one of the things I really look at trying to do. Here, again, he just lose the club face a little bit. You'd see it more from down the line, but that toe of that golf club is going to hang down at the ground a little bit more. So that as he comes into here, he tries to move across, but he's got to hang back and he's got to try and square that golf club and it's going to flip across. Mm-hmm. Now, one of my favorite drills for people that will lose control of the club face during impact is an impact drill through here. So I'll get him to go through the routine of his swing. I think it's really important when you do this, rather than go to just straight into a position. I want them to go through the rehearsal of their whole swing of how they get to that position rather than just kind of skip a step.
Right. Okay.
So we'd get him back here. We'd get his wrist in a better position. So it would shorten his swing down slightly. Then we're going to bring him down into kind of a pre-impact position where his hands are going to be pretty close to kind of level with his thigh, club shafts fairly close to level with the ground. Now, all I want to do here, and we'll look at what he's going to do with his pressure at this point as well. As he's in here, he's obviously working himself down. He knows he needs to get this pressure to his left side, which he does. So what I want him to do from here is make what feels like a 2 or 3 inch backswing, and then go ahead and pitch one out there at 70, 80 yards from there. What's going to happen is the club face in a good position now, but we need to teach him how to fire and how to move through the golf ball. Now, if you haven't got speed built up in the golf club already, because you've only got a short swing, your body's going to have to find a way to create it. And naturally, it'll do that. So what you'll see here, again, as he goes back, and this is the other thing about pressure, if you look at his swing here from where he is, compared to here, look how his pressure has gone from 84% in his lead foot to 89, 90% in his trail foot, but his body has barely moved. Yeah. So that's the difference where we're looking at pressure and how much your body moves. So what he's going to do is he's doing that because he needs to try and create speed. So he's going to load his trail foot. He's then going to drive straight into his lead side again. But from here, his body's going to rotate. And now you can see how he creates a much more dynamic impact position. And then he's going to carry on turning through the shot to pitch it out. Wow. It's a brilliant little drill. So we do that for a little bit. And then we can get him into, I think I've just got that video in there. So that was the drill video that I had. So this one, again, if we play it kind of through, get him to here, bring himself down, get himself settled, wrist in a good place, get him down to hands by his thigh, little move, and pitch it out there.
Nice. What do you call that drill?
Stabilize. For me, I just kind of sort of call it a drill, sort of stabilize impact, really. More than anything
Stabilizing
else.
Impact drill. Okay. We always have to name the drills, Todd, because everybody watching, they'll send me an email tomorrow and say, hey, what was that point when Todd talked about that drill? What was it called again? So we have to name it. I've got the cheek checker. I've got the double tap. I've got all sorts of crazy drills. Stabilizing impact drill, whatever.
Yeah, that's it. But cool. It's well, I've done it a lot myself in the past, but I think for me, it's a great one because then what you do is you build that into a player where you say, okay, well now you've gone through the motions, you've broken it down. When you get to impact, your body now knows what to do because you put it in a scenario where it's got a fine power, so it's going to do it. And then as you make your swing, all you're trying to do is you're trying to make a full swing as normal, let your pressure settle to the left, be patient, and then here, just feel like you're doing the drill. And all you're going to do from there is finish it off for a fuller swing.
Easy.
So it kind of comes into a little bit, I guess, what Fleetwood does a fair bit. Tommy's always had one where he used to struggle a little bit when he was younger of losing the ball to the left. So that's where that kind of held off finish comes in. And again, he's just trying to do the same thing. He's just trying to keep everything turning together.
Looks awesome. How long have you been working with Ben?
This is his second lesson.
Nice.
This is same guy from earlier. So this was a little drill we did in his second lesson before we got him to the final slide, which is the one I showed you a moment ago, which is here from down the line. So again, from here, then his pressure gets so much better. He drives to his left side. So again, his club face here. Now we've done that bit of work and shortened it up. If we look at club face, we're looking for ideally kind of club face or grooves to kind of match what his lead arm's doing. Right. Then from here, he can settle his pressure into his left side. And then through here, he can really stabilize that golf club through impact. And what you'll notice, we put a cane out in front of him as a start point. So for me, I wanted to try and make him feel like he was going to send it over here. I wanted to feel like he was almost going to block it slightly. Because again, from before, he would return the golf club to the ball before his hands, the face would get closed and everything would be starting left of that cane. So a lot of the times if we're working on stuff, start point's really important to me, what I'd look at, trying to sort of reduce dispersion in players. So we'd get an intermediate target out in front of him and say, right, I want you to start it at that cane or to the right of it.
Nice. So that's awesome. This student must be thrilled. He looks really great and he's after videos. He looks like
Yeah,
really fun golfer. Okay, really quickly, just as a reminder, we only have a few minutes left with Todd. If you guys have questions, please put them in the chat window. And don't forget that if you are a golf student and you would like access to V1 Game that we showed tonight, if you put webinar in the code, you will get 50% off. All of the golf instructors in our V1 network not only have access to V1 Game and V1 Coach, but also V1 Marketplace, which is a landing page that Todd is a member of. And you can go and get lessons from Todd from anywhere in the world. So please let me know, Mandy Von C. My team will put contact information in chat for me if you want to get set up with Game or Coach or Marketplace. Todd, so to totally put you on the spot, I'm going to stop your screen share. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about the double tap? I'm just curious what you think about that drill.
No, definitely. Like I say, for me, it seemed like it's just getting a lot more done underground early. Like I said, about spooling up the turbo a little bit, getting more movement in the ground, in the body. I kind of look at it as saying, well, if you're a tennis player waiting to receive a serve, you don't know which direction it's going. There's a lot of what's going on during the swing before you actually move. To me, that's just kind of ramping up the power a little bit as you go through. Also, as Terry sort of said, with other traces, with Carl Berkshire and other guys, having more breaks. If you've got more breaks in the golf swing, by break I mean kind of changing in directions, then you're delivering more force to the next sort of stage or the next chain down the link. So I can kind of see how that double tapping going through is kind of creating a lot more links to spread the power down the chain to ultimately be able to produce more into the golf club, really. Yeah, so if you didn't see the body track webinar that I got to join last Friday, we're talking about a sort of a thought drill that Terry threw out there. It was called the double tap. So it's trying to get more weight to the lead edge. And he was thinking, he's using the word foot movement patterns, which is a great way to describe what we're talking about as far as traces. And part of that was a double tap. And yes, the recording of tonight's webinar will be available on the V1 Sports YouTube channel. Todd and I will both share it on our social media channels as well. Todd, it is very late in your part of the world, so I will wrap up our webinar. But thank you so much for taking a few struggles that we addressed in V1 Game and sharing how we would, or how you would fix them in using the body track mat. I think your presentation tonight was pretty spectacular. I know there's lots of people that are going to do the drills you left us with, but thank you so much for your time. No, pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Like I say, it's been great being part of the V1 team. Everyone's been great, and look forward to trying to make more traces and improve more golfers with the body track, really. Awesome. Thank you. And we will all support you in any of your tournaments that you play, because we love having you a part of our family. And I'm seeing comments that people are thanking us for our webinar tonight, and I'm really grateful for your time. So thanks, and let us know if there's anything that we can do to support you over on the other side of the pond. Yeah, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me, best way to get a hold of me, like I say, either my email address, which is Todd, TODD, @markjanes.com, or like I say, on Marketplace and Instagram is the main social media that I use, which is @TODDYADCOCK. Okay. @Todd Adcock. Haley, can you put that in the chat, please? Todd Y Adcock is the Instagram handle, and Todd will receive messages there. So if you see a post from Todd and you have a question about it, please feel free to message him and ask about it. We have a really cool network of golf instructors that share information. And I'm sure if it's a fun, cool question, Todd will probably loop in some of his resources like Hash or Richard Hughes. So please feel free to reach out there. And anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks, Todd. Cheers, right.